How did it happen so fast? Who allowed it? And why on earth was Karen Hallow, president of the Killjoy Estate HOA, so eager to stomp all over my family's land as if she owned it? My name is Payne, and I had no clue I was walking into the fight of my life. But here's the kicker. Just when I thought I'd uncovered everything, I found out Karen had even bigger secrets up her perfectly ironed sleeve. If I didn't figure out a way to take her down legally, and a little bit creatively, I could lose not just the farm, but my entire legacy. Stay with me, because by the end of this story, Karen won't just be facing me. She'll be facing everyone she ever tried to bully. And trust me, the showdown is bigger than any hotel you've ever seen. Hey, before we jump into this wild story, I have a small favor to ask. If you could take a second to hit that like button and subscribe, it would really help our channel grow and bring you even more crazy stories like this one. Also, we love seeing where our audience is tuning in from. Drop a comment below and let us know which city you're watching from. It's always amazing to see how far I remember the day so clearly. The sun was blazing over Killjoy Estate, highlighting the rolling fields that had been in my family for 3 generations. My grandpa, Old Man Reed, always said, "Son, the land listens to you if you treat it right." I used to roll my eyes at that, but it turns out he was onto something deeper than I realized. Anyway, let's rewind 6 months, because building a massive 3-story hotel in literally 1 month would be insane, right? Back then, I was traveling for a big job in Europe. I'm a software consultant, pretty much the only job I know that can pay enough to keep our farmland afloat. My wife Lillian stayed home to manage day-to-day chores, feed our chickens, and keep watch over the property. Everything was normal, peaceful, but that peace was about to be shattered. One morning, Lillian called me with panic in her voice. She said, "Payne, you won't believe what's happening. There are surveyors and bulldozers on the edge of our fields." I nearly dropped my phone. "Bulldozers? On our farmland? Who gave them permission?" She paused, sounding terrified. "I asked them. They said the Killjoy Estate HOA has plans for a community development project. Something about a brand new business complex. They have a ton of paperwork, but I don't know what it means." I fumed quietly. That's when I first heard the name Karen Hallow tossed around. She was the new HOA president, apparently. She'd replaced the old president who retired. Word on the street was that Karen had a personal crusade to modernize the entire area. People said she was unstoppable, like a steamroller in designer heels. I told Lillian to stay calm and gather as much information as possible. Meanwhile, I booked a flight home. My job was important, sure, but nothing was as important as stopping someone from messing with my farmland. Over the next few weeks, I tied up loose ends overseas, hopped on a plane, and rushed back, half expecting to see a small fence or maybe a paved walkway near the property line. Imagine my shock when I drove up and saw steel beams, a crane, and a half-built hotel towering on the far end of my fields. I almost ran my truck into the mailbox. The entire place looked like a construction war zone. Gigantic concrete walls were up. Workers in bright vests bustled everywhere. Trucks beeped in reverse. My old field, where I used to run as a kid, was now a labyrinth of scaffolding and caution tape. How could this be real? I mumbled to myself, stepping out of my truck. The dust choked my lungs and the hot sun burned my neck. Everything about it screamed illegal, yet here it was. A random construction worker approached me with a polite but guarded look. "Sir, you can't park here. This area is restricted." I stared at him, my heart pounding. "Restricted? Buddy, this is my farmland." He blinked in surprise. "Oh, I suggest you talk to the project manager." Then he pointed toward a swanky-looking trailer office plopped in the middle of the site. A giant sign read, "Killjoy Estate Community Expansion. Project lead, Karen Hallow." And that's how I discovered my once quiet farmland was apparently the next big community expansion. My jaw tightened. I crumpled my fists, feeling so much anger and confusion. The worker shrugged uncomfortably, then scurried off like a startled rabbit. Fuming, I marched toward the trailer. The door flew open before I got close, and out stepped a woman with short, razor-sharp hair, a crisp white blouse, and an expression that could sour milk. She looked me up and down like I was a stain on her fancy shoes. "You must be Payne," she said, crossing her arms. I'm Karen Hallow, president of the Killjoy Estate HOA. You're blocking our construction zone. Your construction zone? I thundered back. That's my farmland, Karen. She gave a mocking laugh. Actually, the Killjoy Estate HOA board approved this land for redevelopment months ago. The county signed off. The paperwork is perfectly legit. She snapped her fingers, and from inside the trailer, an assistant scurried out with a thick file of documents. I stared, my heart racing. You can't just build a hotel on my family's property without my permission. Karen flicked through the papers. Well, I'm sure we'll find that we have every right to do so. It was deemed underutilized farmland and absorbed into the community development plan. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a meeting with the contractors. Underutilized farmland? My voice cracked. I have crops here every year. You can't just decide it's worthless. She gave a condescending pat to my shoulder. We can, and we did. And with that, she whirled around and disappeared inside the trailer. That afternoon, I called up my buddy Mason, a local land surveyor with a knack for sniffing out shady boundary deals. He was a laid-back guy with a huge beard, always reeking of cheap aftershave, but he was the best in the business. Mason listened calmly as I ranted about the half-built hotel. Then he whistled. Dude, that's a big project. No way it got approved in just a few weeks. Permits alone take months, sometimes years. Tell me about it, I growled. She claims it was all official. I left for 6 months and suddenly half my fields are a construction site. Something doesn't add up. Mason agreed to meet me on the farmland the next day. He arrived with his dusty old pickup loaded with equipment. As we walked around the property, the ground vibrating from the heavy machinery, he shook his head. Payne, I see at least 3 separate boundary lines that look suspicious. How suspicious? He shrugged. Like someone moved them. The official county records likely say one thing, but the stakes in the ground say another. If they filed new surveys or zone changes while you were away, you might have been blindsided. Rage simmered in me again. Karen must have orchestrated it. Mason set up his tripod and measuring tools. We'll get to the bottom of it. You might have a strong legal case if we can prove the HOA messed with official boundaries. While Mason worked, I phoned my wife Lillian. She was inside our small farmhouse dealing with the noise and dust from the construction. Any sign of building inspectors? I asked. She sighed, coughing slightly from the swirling dust. They come and go, but it's all so fast. The real estate agent, who's always buddy-buddy with Karen, popped by too. He had these glossy brochures about the Killjoy Estate Hotel and Spa. Said it'll bring in big tourist money. I wanted to scream. This was my farmland, not some spa retreat. Hang tight, Lillian. Mason's surveying. We'll find a crack in their story, I promise. That evening, I poured a stiff glass of iced tea. What, you thought I was going to say whiskey? My mind buzzed with questions. Did Karen bribe local officials? Was the county complicit? The next morning, I rummaged through Grandpa's old filing cabinets, praying for something, anything that might help. That's when I found an ancient, dusty binder labeled Original Land Trust Documents. Flipping through the yellowed pages, I discovered a goldmine of old property deeds, boundary descriptions, and even hand-drawn maps. Grandpa had kept everything. According to these documents, my farmland was placed under a special trust. It required the land to remain agricultural unless I personally signed it away. That's definitely not something I ever did. I felt a spark of hope. If that trust was still valid, Karen's entire project might be illegal. I phoned a lawyer, Tessa, a distant cousin who specialized in property law. She answered with a friendly yawn, obviously just waking up. Payne, is that you? It's been forever. Tessa, sorry to bother you, but I have an emergency, I said, my words tumbling out in a rush. The Killjoy Estate HOA is building a huge hotel on my farmland. I think they forged boundary changes or something. Her voice sharpened. That's serious. Send me all the documents, especially that land trust. If it's legitimate, we might have them cornered. Cornering Karen? That sounded lovely. So I scanned every page, emailed them over, and waited. Meanwhile, I called the county zoning office, hoping to talk to someone about these permits. But every time I asked for details, they gave me the runaround. After hours on hold, I finally reached a bored-sounding clerk who insisted the Killjoy Estate project was approved. She refused to answer any more questions. It reeked of corruption. I could have jumped for joy. That's the best news I've heard. Thank you, Tessa. I'll find more proof. Just be careful. Karen might fight dirty. A chill ran down my spine. That woman's frosty glare was enough to freeze a lake. If she found out I had these documents, well, let's just say I wouldn't put it past her to pull some shady moves, or even trespass to find and destroy the proof. The next morning, Mason discovered something shocking: a hidden pipeline under the farmland, installed secretly by the construction crew. It was meant to divert water from a natural creek that ran through my property. This pipeline would feed the hotel's fancy fountains and landscaping. The worst part? If they fully activated it, it could leave my fields starved for water. So not only were they building on my land, they planned to sabotage the farmland's lifeblood. With Tessa's legal angle and Mason's new discovery of the secret pipeline, we had some strong cards to play. But what we really needed was a smoking gun, concrete proof that Karen had manipulated the system. One afternoon, I got a call from Becca, a friend who worked in real estate. She whispered, "Payne, you didn't hear this from me, but I found strange notations in the county's online land records. Stuff about your farmland being declared abandoned for the sake of fast-track development. I'm emailing you the screenshots. Watch your back." My farmland abandoned? That was insane. I'd been farming there actively for years, and Lillian was there the entire 6 months I was gone. Yet someone had submitted paperwork stating no one used the property anymore. Could Karen have bribed someone at the county office to push that through? As the dust swirled outside my window, my mind raced. I forwarded everything to Tessa, who nearly exploded with excitement. "This is exactly the kind of evidence we need," she said. "Whoever filed these false statements is in big trouble. Keep it coming." Of course, trouble had a way of showing up at the worst time. Early one morning, while Lillian and I were finishing breakfast, a loud knock rattled the front door. I opened it to find 2 local cops standing on the porch, wearing apologetic looks. "Sir, we received a complaint that you're trespassing on private property," one officer said awkwardly. I blinked in confusion. "What are you talking about? This is my house, my farmland." The second officer sighed. "We know, Mr. Payne, but the complaint came from the Killjoy Estate HOA. They claim the farmland behind your house belongs to them now, according to official paperwork. We have to file a report." My anger surged. "Unbelievable! They're the ones trespassing. Look behind you at that giant hotel foundation. That's on my land." They looked at each other, clearly uncomfortable. "Mind if we come in and see your deed or any proof of ownership?" "Gladly," I snapped, inviting them inside. I showed them the old land trust documents, the current deed in my name, and a stack of evidence. They whistled, realizing this was way out of their league. The older cop nodded. "All right, Mr. Payne, I'll file this accordingly. Between you and me, half the station thinks the HOA is up to no good. We're just caught in the middle." I thanked them, shutting the door behind them. As I watched their patrol car leave, I spotted a sleek black SUV parked across the street. Sure enough, I saw Karen behind the wheel, glaring at me through tinted windows. She gave me a nasty grin, then drove off. The message was clear. She was turning up the heat, and she wasn't afraid to use intimidation. But intimidation works both ways. That very night, I heard a loud clang outside. Rushing out with a flashlight, I found one of Karen's minions, a local tough guy named Brock who sometimes did odd jobs for the HOA, messing with the lock on my barn. I yelled, causing him to bolt. But the next day, I discovered the barn had been ransacked. My grandpa's old land documents were scattered. Thankfully, Tessa had the digital copies. But it confirmed my fears. Karen was willing to break the law to bury our evidence. Lillian was furious. "We need to up security," she insisted. So we installed cameras around the property. Mason set up a motion sensor near the hidden pipeline. If they tried messing with it again, we'd catch them on film. But we needed even more help, someone inside the HOA. That's when fate threw us a lifeline named Mark, an HOA board member who'd grown tired of Karen's bullying. He texted me from a burner phone saying, "I need to meet in private. I have information you'll want." We arranged a secret meetup at a local diner. Mark showed up wearing a baseball cap pulled low. glancing around nervously as if Karen might pop out of the salt shaker. "I can't stay long," he whispered, sliding me a USB flash drive under the table. "This is every email Karen sent about the hotel project, secret negotiations, bribery details, the works. She threatened to ruin my life if I ever spoke out, but I'm done being scared." I was speechless. This was like gold. "Thank you, Mark. Why are you risking this?" His expression darkened. "Because what she's doing is wrong. And it's not just about the hotel. She's planning to push out all older landowners in the area. She wants to turn Killjoy Estate into some fancy tourist trap with big profits for her cronies. You were the biggest roadblock, so she went after you first." Now we had proof Karen had committed serious crimes. Fraud, conspiracy, maybe even racketeering. My heart pounded, half in triumph, half in fear. She'd do anything to keep this hidden, but I had no intention of backing down. "Payne, these documents are a game changer," Tessa said the next day. "We can file an injunction to stop the construction if a judge sees this, but we'll need to present it carefully." I nodded. "I'm ready. Let's do it." We marched into the local courthouse to file our papers. While Tessa handled the legal jargon, I felt a surge of confidence. Finally, we had the upper hand. Solid evidence Karen lied and manipulated the system. Once the judge reviewed everything, construction might be halted before the hotel was finished. But guess who was waiting for us in the courthouse lobby? Karen Hallow, tapping her expensive heels on the tile, arms folded across her fancy blazer. She smirked. "Here to file a complaint, I take it?" I refused to be baited. "Actually, we're here to expose your crooked deals." Her cheek twitched, but she recovered fast. "You think some old papers will scare me? You're messing with the wrong person, Payne." I rolled my eyes. "We'll see who's scared when the judge sees your emails." Then I walked right past her, refusing to look back. That afternoon, the judge granted a preliminary hearing to determine if a construction freeze was necessary. Karen's lawyers were slick, but Tessa was on fire, presenting the land trust documents, boundary surveys from Mason, and yes, even a few of Karen's incriminating emails. The judge stroked his chin thoughtfully, clearly alarmed by what he saw. Karen's lead lawyer tried to spin it, claiming the trust was invalid and the farmland was abandoned, blah, blah, blah. But Tessa was unstoppable, dropping fact after fact, including statements from neighbors who'd seen me and Lillian actively farming for years. The judge declared, "I'm placing a temporary hold on all further construction until we can review the legitimacy of these records. If the farmland trust stands, Miss Hallow, you have some serious explaining to do." That night, we got the biggest shock yet. A group of outraged local farmers arrived at my doorstep, led by an elderly man named Russell, who'd lived in Killjoy Estate for half a century. He revealed that Karen had tried the same land grab trick on them. Some parted with their land, but some fought back. The kicker? They discovered Karen was funneling money from the hotel project into an account possibly connected to her personal use. If we proved it, she'd be charged with embezzlement or worse. Russell gave me a thick binder. "We were too scared to come forward alone, but if you're already fighting her, we want to join forces. She can't bully all of us if we stick together." I was floored. Karen wasn't just aiming at my farmland, she was systematically stealing farmland across the region to expand her empire. My blood boiled. We had to stop her, not just for me, but for every farmer whose livelihood she threatened. I'd never experienced such righteous rage. "Tessa, we have to blow this wide open. The court hearing might not be enough," she agreed. "We need the media's attention. With enough public outcry, the county officials will scramble to distance themselves from Karen. She'll have no cover." So we contacted a local investigative journalist named Trina, who was known for exposing political corruption. She jumped at the story. Within days, her camera crew was at my property, filming the half-constructed hotel, the pipeline, and interviewing me, Mason, Lillian, and Russell about Karen's antics. However, the final showdown was yet to come in the courtroom, and boy was it a doozy. On the day of the big hearing, the courtroom was packed. Locals crowded in, from curious neighbors to local farmers who'd once been silent. Even Mark, the whistleblower from the HOA board, showed up, wearing a nervous smile. Karen sauntered in, flanked by two smug lawyers. She wore a bright red power suit that screamed, "Look at me! I'm unstoppable!" But her eyes had a flicker of panic. Maybe she sensed her empire was on shaky ground. The judge, a stern woman named Judge Reese, called the session to order. Tessa presented our evidence with calm confidence. She detailed the land trust's legal language, the pipeline sabotage, the falsified county filings, the hush-hush emails, and the statements from the other farmers. The entire courtroom buzzed with disbelief. Karen's lawyers tried everything, claiming the land trust was outdated, the farmland was worthless, that it was emergency development for the region's benefit. But Tessa knocked each excuse down. At one point, Karen herself demanded to speak. She slammed her manicured hand on the table, proclaiming, "This is a personal witch hunt by Mr. Payne. He's stuck in the past while I'm trying to bring progress." Judge Reese raised an eyebrow. "Miss Hallow, calm yourself. The documents suggest you bypassed multiple legal steps to seize farmland. Care to explain?" Karen ranted about how farmland was obsolete in modern times, how tourism is the future, and how she was only following HOA guidelines. It was so arrogant, half the audience started muttering angrily. She even claimed that nobody needs old fields when you can have a luxury spa. The judge looked unimpressed. Then Tessa brought out the big guns. Mark took the stand, testifying under oath about Karen's threats and backdoor dealings. The prosecution also entered her shady pipeline designs as evidence. By the time Mark finished, Karen's lawyers were sweating bullets. Judge Reese folded her hands. "Given the seriousness of these accusations, fraud, conspiracy, possible environmental violations, I'm granting an immediate halt on all construction, pending a full investigation. Additionally, Miss Hallow, you and your associates will be under review for potential criminal charges if these allegations hold up." A month later, the final hearing took place. Judge Reese returned with a detailed written ruling. She declared, "The farmland trust was legally binding. The construction approvals were fraudulently obtained. Karen's pipeline plan violated environmental regulations. Karen was likely guilty of multiple counts of fraud and conspiracy." The judge's words rang through the packed courtroom. "Miss Hallow, I find that your actions were intentional and malicious. As a result, I'm ordering the partial demolition of any illegal construction on Payne's farmland, plus restitution for damages. Further criminal proceedings may follow pending the investigation results." With cameras flashing, she practically hissed at us, "This isn't over, Payne. I'll keep fighting." I smiled wryly. "Go ahead, Karen. We'll be ready." In the weeks that followed, the county sent demolition crews to tear down the half-built hotel structure on my fields. Watching those massive concrete walls crumble was oddly satisfying, like taking a weight off my chest. Karen Hallow faced heavy legal troubles. She lost her position as HOA president. The board forced her out after a unanimous vote of no confidence. Then the district attorney filed charges for fraud and conspiracy to commit forgery. Turns out, messing with official property lines is a big no-no. The last I heard, she was trying to scramble together bail money and a decent defense attorney. Good luck with that.